Welcome in. So everyone's muted, of course, because we've got a large group here. But you can flip on your cameras if you like. It'd be great to see your faces. You don't have to. But thank you so much for being here. I know how much energy it takes to show up for something like this, especially with ADHD. So the fact that you logged in today, that's already a win. Where are you guys all tuning in from? Let's see if this chat works. Looks like a good amount of people from overseas. Man, thank you. Whatever time it is, wherever you are, thank you for thank you for being here. Massachusetts, Ontario, UK, Michigan, Columbia, New York, Los Angeles, my old stomping grounds, Quebec. All right, cool. What do you guys do for work? 2 a.m. and loving it. Nice. The old me would have loved it too. The new me tries to be in bed by 9:30. Tech support student, hospice social worker, IT, payroll engineer, nurse. Awesome. Looks like we have a good diversity of professions. 3 a.m. in Germany, nurse. I went to Berlin a few years ago. Loved it. And my brother-in-law is German, in fact. Oh, fun fact. Okay, anyway, let's jump in. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. Glad you're here. Quick housekeeping item. Ariana, my lovely admin slash wife slash mother of my children, one here, one on the way, is here in the chat helping out. She'll be throwing some stuff as we go along to help you guys follow along. So keep an eye out there, and also helping with Q&A at the end a bit. So let's jump right in. Okay, everyone, grab a pen and paper. Or if you're feeling, courageous, go ahead and just throw it in the chat. We're going to do a small pop quiz. Hopefully that doesn't give anybody PTSD. It's going to be easy. Don't just think the answers in your head, though. Either write them down or throw them in the chat. There are no wrong answers. This is just for you. Okay, question 1. When you sit down to start a big project, what usually happens? A, you stare at the blank screen and suddenly feel the urge to do something else, anything else. B, you bounce back between emails, Slack, and that report that you need to do without finishing any of them. Or C, you put off the work until the deadline is right on top of you and you end up pulling a late night. Okay, question number 2. How would you describe your typical workday? A, constantly busy, but rarely feeling done. B, always putting out fires, never moving forwards. C, overwhelmed by a backlog that just keeps growing. That's a typical workday. Okay, last question. In meetings, what tends to happen? A, you forget the key point you wanted to make until the meeting is over. B, you blurt out something you regret because frustration got the best of you. Or C, you leave with good intentions to follow up, but then you never do. Okay, go ahead and jot down your A, B's, and C's. We'll come back to this a little bit later. Now, if you recognize yourself in any of those, you're not alone. The World Federation of ADHD reports that adults with ADHD are 60% more likely to underperform at work despite being of equal intelligence. And according to the Harvard Business Review, almost half of professionals with ADHD say they've been overlooked for promotions they were qualified for. That's exactly what ADHD in the workplace feels like. It's like you're trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. And I left my props over here. All right, we got square peg, we got round hole, right? It doesn't fit. And you've been told to jam it in sideways because somehow that's how everyone else is doing it. And sure enough, you look around and you see all of your coworkers impossibly doing it with ease. You look behind you and you see more pegs piling up. That's your backlog. Your anxiety rises, as does that old, tired feeling. I know I'm capable of more than this, so why do I end up underwater? It's not that the tasks you're being asked to do are too difficult. You understand what needs to happen and how to do each step. They're not beyond your cognitive capability. Yet, when you put everything together, inevitably you start slipping, and then you keep slipping, and then before long, you're drowning. Your brain is capable, but it isn't controlled. It's like bringing a feral dog to an obedience competition. While other dogs are healing, yours is chasing its tail. And just like the border collie that grew up in the back alleys fending for itself, it's smart enough to win the competition, but without training, it's never going to come home with a trophy. But here's the good news. That dog can still be trained, and so can your brain. What I love about this analogy is my parents actually used to have a completely neurotic and totally defective border collie, RIP Oreo. Okay, executive functions are the skills that control planning, prioritization, starting, finishing, and they're not fixed traits, which means that they're skills, and skills can be improved. Even better, most people with ADHD have what's called a spiky profile, meaning that you don't have deficits, likely, you don't have deficits in all of your executive functions. You have strengths in some. And that's why you can probably crush it in some areas and then completely fall apart in others. And once you understand that profile, which spikes are high, which dip, you can finally stop brute forcing your way through with caffeine and late nights. Excuse me. And start designing systems that work with your brain, not against it. By the end of this session, you'll have a map of your executive functioning profile and a clear path to finally feeling like you're on top of it. Remember those ABCs you wrote down earlier? I hope so. It was just a minute ago. Here's the thing. Even if you struggled with initiation, planning, or follow through, you've also had moments where you've probably surprised yourself, right? Think about it. How many times have you said to yourself, wow, I can't believe I figured that out. I definitely didn't do it the way I was supposed to do it, the way people expected me to, but somehow I pulled it off. Probably quite a bit, right? You didn't plan, you didn't prioritize, maybe you didn't organize the right way, yet you still got the task done. Why? Because your brain fired up its mental compensatory system. Peripheral skills stepped in to support weaker ones. That system has saved your butt probably more times than you can count. The problem is it usually kicks in late in crisis when you're already falling behind. But imagine if you could bring the same system to the forefront. Use it on purpose. Not just to dig yourself out of holes, but to keep you ahead of the curve. Okay, before we continue, let me quickly introduce myself. If you would join me over here. My name is Eric. I was diagnosed with ADHD at 7 years old. And throughout school and my professional life, I always felt like I was going through a car wash without a car, if you know what I mean. Just getting beaten up by life until I really started focusing on addressing the challenges that were making me miserable. As soon as I began straightening out my own life, I discovered a passion for helping others who were experiencing the same problems. At the time, I was working with inner city kids through a program called School on Wheels, and inadvertently with kids with ADHD. And I loved the exercise of coming up with creative solutions to their problems, which also is what I was doing for myself. Skip forward, I now work at a psychiatric practice as an executive functioning coach. I myself am not a doctor, but I do work alongside them. Okay, getting back to it, here's where we're at. When you have ADHD, your executive functioning is impaired. And that's the part that's been standing between you and your potential. Now, this is key. Those moments where you surprise yourself, that we just talked about a second ago, pulling things off last minute, even though you didn't plan and prioritize the quote unquote right way, that's not luck. That's a lot of action going on behind the scenes. That's strengths stepping in to cover your weak spots. That's frantic strategies deployed to jump over invisible hurdles. Task initiation, planning, or prioritization maybe had you stumbling. but your quick problem solving, creativity, maybe even people skills got you to the finish line. And this is where the shift happens. Instead of letting those weak spots drag you down, you can leverage your strengths to support them and shrink the obstacles that stand in your way. And that's how you stop feeling like you're always one step behind and finally start showing up consistently the way you know you're capable of. And it all starts with understanding your executive functioning profile. Once you can clearly see your spikes, both highs and lows, you'll be able to design a strategy that plays to your strengths and supports your weak spots. And here's the exciting part. You'll discover all that in the next 30 minutes. The clarity around your executive functioning will allow us to narrow in the focus through what at one point felt like a massive amorphous blob of, I can't do this, it's too much, and start improving the exact things that have been holding you back. When you do this, the impossible suddenly shrinks. Within just a few days, you'll notice that the very areas that used to derail you, follow through, organization, prioritization, stop feeling like permanent flaws. You'll start building momentum instead of constantly scrambling to catch up. At the heart of it, improving your executive functioning isn't just try to be more organized, right? It comes down to knowing where you're strong, knowing where you need support, how to use the first to address the second, and taking down obstacles that are in your way. Now, because we only have a short amount of time, I'm going to do my absolute best to pack as much value into this as I possibly can without overwhelming you. When I'm done, if you want to take this further, at the end, I'm going to share with you details on how you can sign up to do just that with my ADHD Unblocked 4-week program. And because you're live today, I'll share a special early enrollment bonus with you as well. That said, whether you decide to take that step or not, you're still going to leave this session with, if I've done my job, a totally new outlook and strategy that you can take into the real world that will make a big difference in your day-to-day life. And on that note, I'd like to make a quick agreement with you all. Regardless of if you take just what we learned today and roll with it, or if you sign up to be a part of the next 4-week cohort, this is going to involve a small investment of time and I'm sorry, I meant to say effort, time as well, but effort. I can provide you with the greatest advice ever, a golden ticket, but without a small commitment, it's useless. We're ADHDers. I know you know this. So here's what I need from you today. Write things down. Let's do these exercises together and be honest with yourself. If you're down to give this next 30 minutes or so your full attention, not just for me, but for you, go ahead and drop a quick yes in the chat so I know we're all aligned and ready to go. Yeah. All right, awesome. Okay, now, before we dive deeper, I need to throw out a quick little disclaimer. This isn't a medical training. I'm not a doctor. Dr. Whittington has a nice ring to it, but that's not me. I'm not here to diagnose you or tell you whether you do have ADHD or don't. Only a licensed clinician can do that. What we are doing here is shining a light on patterns you already live with every single day, the stuff that makes life feel harder than it should. We're going to illuminate those patterns clearly without all the shame and confusion that usually comes with them. So you can think of it like this. Doctors diagnose, prescribe, and provide therapy. My lane is a little different. I help you take practical day-to-day actions that make your work and life run smoother. So if you imagine a Venn diagram with medication, therapy, and executive functioning coaching, each of these circles is effective on its own, very effective on its own, but when you use them together, they overlap into something far more powerful. On a personal note, the clients that I work with at HealthQuest, that's the name of the practice that I work at, the clients that I work with that have a full spectrum of support, the middle of the diagram, tend to make the biggest strides in the shortest amount of time. So that said, everyone benefits from executive functioning coaching. So today, what you're about to learn works on its own, but if you're already using other supports, it's only going to make them stronger. Okay, let's get to the fun part. Self-improvement, ADHD or not, usually starts with an understanding of self. In the context of executive functioning, it starts with answering this question. What does your executive functioning profile look like? So, grab that pen and paper. Once again, over the next few minutes, I'll walk you through 9 executive functions. By the way, there are different models of executive functioning from, I think, 5 executive functions to 12. I think 9 is a good, 9 encompasses a lot, every aspect of executive functioning without getting too overwhelming and into the weeds. So I like the 9 executive function model. I'm going to explain to you what each executive function looks like. And as I do, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 3. 1 means that executive function is a weakness of yours. 3 means that it's a strength. And 2 means that you're somewhere in the middle. It's not a strength per se, but your executive functioning in that domain is okay. It could be better, right? All right, here we go. A day of executive functioning challenges. Okay, the first one is impulse control. The ability to pause before acting or speaking. So let's look at an example of poor impulse control. Your alarm goes off at 7 a.m. Good morning. Instead of getting out of bed, you impulsively hit the snooze button 3 times. Later that morning, you grab your phone and start scrolling social media, losing another 20 minutes. So that's a good example of poor impulse control and a failure to resist immediate urges like hitting snooze and scrolling. So if that sounds like you, that would be a 1. Write down a 1 for impulse control. You could also just write IC, abbreviated if you want. So 1 for impulse control. If that doesn't sound like you at all, then you may have strong impulse control. That would be a 3. All right, next. Working memory. Holding and using information in your mind for short periods of time. So here's an example of poor working memory. You walk into the kitchen to make your breakfast. On the way you think, you know what, I should grab my lunch from the fridge to pack it. By the time you get to the fridge, the thought has vanished. You only remember late in the day, you're already at work, and you're hungry. Working memory, holding tasks and info in your mind. So that example would be a 1 for working memory. Next, we've got emotional regulation, managing feelings so they don't take over your actions. You're in a team meeting at work and a colleague dismisses your idea without much consideration. You feel your frustration rise, and instead of taking a breath and calmly re-explaining your point, you blurt out sarcastically, "Well, thanks for the support," which creates tension in the room. So that would be a 3. With a sprinkle of weak impulse control. So if this is you, but you're not blurting anything out and it still affects you maybe a little more than you think it should, that might be a 2. Emotional regulation, managing frustration and responding constructively under stress. Next, we have everyone's favorite, task initiation, starting tasks without excessive procrastination. The meeting ends, you sit down at your desk to start a big report. Instead of beginning, you stare at a blank screen for a while, then tidy your desk, then check emails, and avoid the first step for nearly an hour. Task initiation, difficulty starting an important task. Planning and prioritization, deciding what's important and mapping out the steps. It's now mid-morning and suddenly 3 tasks are in your lap. Replying to a couple time-sensitive emails, prepping for another meeting, and finishing the burning report that your boss needed. Instead of choosing strategically, you bounce between all three and end up not completing any. Planning and prioritization, choosing what's most important, and sequencing tasks. I will definitely step on a thumbtack before the end of this call. Organization, keeping track of things, ideas, and spaces in a usable way. Next meeting starts. You're in the meeting trying to find a file on your laptop, but it's buried under a totally incoherent name somewhere in your downloads folder. You waste precious minutes searching while everyone waits and stares at you. Organization, managing systems and materials. Time management, estimating, tracking, and using time effectively. It's now late in your workday, very late in fact, because the report that you thought was only going to take you 30 minutes is still not done, and it's been over 2 hours. You have no choice but to leave the report unfinished because you are now late to pick up your kid from school. Time management, estimating accurately and allocating time. All right, we've got 2 more. Next is cognitive flexibility, adapting when plans or perspectives change. You're on your way to school and traffic reroutes you. But this isn't your route. This isn't the route that you take every day to pick up your kid. So instead of adapting, you panic and try to force the original route, leading you to a standstill and making you even later. Cognitive flexibility, shifting plans when circumstances change. Finally, we have impulse control. Checking on yourself and adjusting as you go. It's the end of the day, you reflect on your day. Man, I was so busy all day, but I feel like I didn't actually get anything done. You only realize in hindsight that you weren't on track instead of noticing it mid-task. Self-monitoring, checking in on performance in the moment. Okay. All right, so now take a look at your page. That is your executive functioning profile. This illustrates why you struggle in some areas of life, but excel in others. This explains why you can crush a presentation one day, but drown in follow-ups the next. When you've encountered a dip in the past, a challenge that requires action from a weak executive function, you've probably done one of 2 things. Either brute forced your way through it or just avoided it altogether. One leaves you drained, the other leaves you feeling drained of life force and purpose, right? Neither address the root. When you focus on your executive functions, you address the problem at its root. And here's the best part. Improving just one executive function, like working memory, for example, ripples out across countless situations in your life. It's unrealistic to address every single struggle you have as a one-off, but you can improve the muscles that support them all. So, now that we have our executive functions rated, let's talk about what we can do with this information. We know where all of our weaknesses are, the areas that are dragging us down the most. We know where we're just getting by, right? Those are the 2s. And we know where our strengths are, our 3s. So right now, let's just set the 2s aside for a moment. We want to spend our energy where we're going to get the maximum impact, right? And that's where our weaknesses are. Earlier, I talked about your mental compensatory system. Excuse me. How, out of necessity, you've been supporting yourself in areas where the way other people do things just doesn't work for you, right? Maybe it's not always efficient, but hey, you've been getting by, right? Now, we're going to stretch that system even further by consciously and deliberately applying our strengths to our weaknesses. By the way, if anyone here doesn't have any strengths, meaning you don't have any threes, you can use twos for this exercise. If anyone only has weaknesses, if you're a one across the board, don't worry, you're not alone. Just sit tight. We're going to address them from another angle in just a minute. Okay? All right, so now we're going to go through this exercise together. So get your pens and paper at the ready. And now think for a moment and take a scenario from your day. Could have been today, yesterday, last week, where something didn't work out for you. Maybe you didn't do something that you were supposed to or wanted to. Maybe it just took too long, or maybe it just made you miserable. It sucked all the life out of you. Okay? So take a moment to think about a scenario. Okay. Now that you have that scenario, take a moment and identify one executive functioning weakness from your list that contributed to things not working out for you. Okay? Okay. All right. Now, take a look at your strengths. Okay? And one by one, think about if any of your executive functioning strengths could have contributed to the situation being improved. Some might not, some probably will. Okay? So think about that for just a moment. And by the way, if anyone is lost right now, we're going to do this again, and I'm going to do it along with you. So don't stress out. Okay. All right. So now that you have the strength that you believe you could have applied to the situation to improve it, write down one quick bullet on how that strength supports the weakness. And if it helps, think about it in the context of the original scenario, not just the weakness being the executive function. Okay. Okay. Hopefully that's enough time. Finally, forecast for one event. Forecast for one event in your near future, the nearer the better, that you can apply this bridge to. Okay, close your eyes and mentally rehearse how you're going to go about this. And by bridge, I mean applying your strength to your weakness in the scenario that's going to happen in the future. Okay, and we're doing this because this little exercise of thinking about it is going to make you more likely to remember this course of action you want to take when you get to it. Okay. Take a sip of water. I'm pretty impatient, just want to keep going, but taking a sip of water helps me take a break, give you guys time for this. Okay. All right. Okay, cool. So now that you've done one together, we're going to do one more, and I'm going to do it with you and show you the steps just in case anyone was unclear about any part of this process. Okay. So for me, the other day, my challenge was writing a YouTube script. I was having a hard time doing it. So the weakness here for me was task initiation. Okay? Pretty obviously task initiation in this case. So Now I'm going to run through my strengths, and you guys can't see them, but for me, emotional regulation is a strength and cognitive flexibility. So the first one, emotional regulation, I'm going to think about that in the scope of this event, not wanting to write the YouTube script, task initiation, and honestly, I can't see where it applies right now. Maybe there's a way in which it does, but it's not coming to me in this moment, so I'm going to say no on emotional regulation. Cognitive flexibility, on the other hand, yes. Yes, definitely, in fact. How so? Well, I can come up with different starting points to begin this process. Because the obvious way for me to start this, which is just sitting down, opening a doc, and starting to type, is a roadblock for me. So instead of sitting down to just write my script, I can choose a new entry point, which is going for a walk with my phone and just talking to my phone about what I want to, do my video on, do voice to text, and getting all my ideas out. Okay. So I know once I do that, I'll have started the process, I'll get some of the work done, and it's going to be easy to carry it forward because, as you all know, once you start a process, it's much easier to keep going. Okay? So that's how I would use cognitive flexibility to support task initiation, right? Now, of course, oh, you know what? Let me finish this off. So the next bullet is how does it support? It's a new entry point, and the next time I'm going to be able to use this, well, for me, is going to be next time I write a script. So anytime I write a script and I'm having a hard time initiating the task, I'm going to take that action. Okay? Okay. Now, of course, right now on this call, we don't have time to repeat this process again and again together, but to get the maximum value out of this, go through it on your own and repeat the process with a new scenario until you have scenarios that hit all of your executive functioning weaknesses. And through the process, you'll be able to apply as many of your strengths as possible to those weaknesses. Okay, you may not be able to find a bridge for all of them. In fact, you probably won't. But there's a good chance you'll be able to bridge many of them. Okay? The goal is to identify as many as you can. For each that you identify a bridge for, make sure to jot down a bullet for what the bridge is, and then keep a list of future scenarios, a running list of future scenarios where you can bridge those gaps. Okay? All right. Let's take a breath. Okay, we're going to switch gears. All right? So far, we've talked about how we can give ourselves a push when faced with an executive functioning weakness, okay? Which is by applying a strength that we have. Think mental compensatory system, adapting, using a strength to support the weakness, okay? Now let's talk about the other side. So if your executive function sits here in the middle, okay, we've given it a push. On this side, we have obstacles, right? Success isn't just about the effort that we put in, which is this side, but about eliminating the invisible hurdles that are in front of us. Everything that's going to cause friction and make it more difficult to complete whatever this task is. These hurdles create an energy mismatch. This means that the amount of energy something takes exceeds the theoretical normal requirement, and as a result, leaves us feeling drained or prevents us from even starting. Okay? The cause of the energy mismatch is due, I don't know why I came over here, is due to what I call saboteurs. Okay? And there are 4 saboteurs. Okay, in any scenario, those hurdles, they can be bucketed in to 4 things. Okay, the first one is task. Oh hope you can read that. Vagueness or overload. Okay, the next one is shame, residue. I'm going to give an explanation for each one in just a sec. Then we've got environmental mismatch. Okay, and then finally we have good old boredom, right? So task vagueness / overload, the steps are unclear, the task is too big, there are too many choices, just too much at once, right? Shame residue, we're having a negative emotional response to this task. Maybe it's something that you've failed at before in the past. Then we've got environmental mismatch. It's too loud, too cluttered, too distracting. And then finally we have boredom. Okay, no reward in sight, low stimulation, low urgency. All right. Every executive functioning challenge you experience will be affected by one or more of these saboteurs. The old you would have put your head down and forced your way through, kicking and screaming, hating every second of it, which would ultimately drain your energy, right? Or you would have just not done it, which often comes with guilt, right? Or more work later, which of course, eventually, ultimately drains your energy as well. But the new you doesn't subject yourself to that pain because the new you has a strategy, right? So let's go back to that scenario that you identified earlier, right? So for me, it was writing my YouTube script. Think about that scenario and take a moment and write down all the saboteurs that stood in the way between you and completing that task. Task vagueness, shame residue, environmental mismatch, boredom. Could be one thing, could be potentially all of them. I'm going to write mine down as well. Okay. Now, it's time to address the saboteurs. So instead of addressing what we're trying to do, we're entering from the point of the saboteur, okay? So just sit back for a second. I'm going to go through and show you exactly how I went through this process for my scenario, okay? So my first saboteur is boredom. Boredom in the monotony of sitting down and typing hundreds of words onto a doc. So now I'm thinking about how I can get a story out that doesn't involve me just sitting down and typing. Two things come to mind for me. One is talking, so voice to text, it doesn't require me doing this. The other is drawing. I like to draw, even though I'm not great at it, as you saw with the dog earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and draw little pictures on sticky notes, and then take those sticky notes and make a storyboard on my wall. Once I've got my complete story in sticky note form, I'm then going to look at my wall and talk through the story that it tells, capturing it voice to text. Okay? So in that I'm using both, my want to draw, my enjoyment for drawing, and also voice to text to skirt around the need to type, at least in the beginning, because that's going to give me a major head start and an on-ramp, making it easy to then go into finishing my script by typing the rest thereafter. So that's how I would address boredom. Okay, next we have task vagueness. All right, so there's kind of a lot that goes into the YouTube script, and when I'm just sitting down thinking about it, it could be a little overwhelming. So the easiest way, the most straightforward way to break anything down truly now for me is using a tool that has emerged in the last few years. It's a great way to break things down into more digestible chunks. Can anyone guess what I'm talking about? ChatGPT, right? It's just like, it's so good for breaking things down and making things simpler. So for the overwhelm I feel around how I'm going to go about this process, I'm going to use ChatGPT to break it down for me super fast. Okay. So that's how we address saboteurs. Okay. I want to give you guys a few moments to go through this process yourselves and see what you're able to come up with. Okay, so I'll walk you through it together. So first, write down that scenario from earlier again if you haven't done it already. All right, and then next, go through each of the 4 saboteurs and write down which ones were present. Okay. Now, again, instead of addressing the situation that we need to solve for, rather than coming up with a solution there, come up with a solution to address the specific saboteur. Just like how I didn't come up with a plan on how to write my YouTube scripts directly, I came up with a plan for how to attack boredom relating to writing my YouTube script, and that gave me my entry point into writing my script. This one, it requires some deep thought, but please give it a go and let me know. I'm going to give you just a few minutes. So in the same way that I told you that to address all of those weaknesses and apply strengths to the individual ones, you'll need to come up with scenarios for each. In the same way, we could do the same thing for the saboteurs. And the idea is to create a bank that you can continue to grow out, relating to each of those individual scenarios that you came up with, which will eventually, the goal is to eventually get to a point where you're covering most every scenario that you're encountered. Because once again, by addressing things at the level of the executive functions, we're creating an overarching system that touches just about every area of our lives. Okay? So we're going to pause for a second. We've done a few exercises together, and I've given you a framework now to build a system around that will have a significant impact on how you go about your day-to-day life, right? There's still more work to do in terms of filling that out and making it, applying it broadly to all of the different areas of your life, which is to say all of the areas that are affected by your executive functioning challenges, right? So right now we're at a crossroads. Option 1 is you take what we covered today, use your notes and start making changes on your own. And if you do, that's absolutely a win. That's great. Option 2 is we work together inside my 4-week live ADHD Unblocked cohort. This is where we go deeper together. We'll take your spiky profile and create a fully fledged ADHD friendly system that addresses all of your executive functioning weaknesses, again, together. This is an accelerated version of the one-on-one work that I do with my clients, and it can absolutely make a difference in your life. Okay, the only real question is, do you want to go about this alone, or do you want to do it with support, structure, and accountability? If you're ready for that second option, let me show you exactly what that program looks like. And I'm not a big slides guy, as you can tell, by the stuff all over my office, but I do have some slides for you. They do look nice. So let me show you exactly what it looks like. The ADHD Unblocked system is a 4-week live coaching experience where we take everything you learned tonight and build it into a clear, repeatable system that fits your brain. Here's how it works. Week 1 is where you'll discover your ADHD blueprint. We'll take your profile and your strength and lay the map foundation, which leads into week 2, where we build your momentum map and expand on squashing saboteurs and rising above deficits. Then in week 3, we're going to learn how to reset on the road by connecting dips on the map and introducing you to reset tools. And finally, in week 4, you'll become the driver and develop out your anti-slip, recommitment, and identity shift plan to solidify sustainability. So by the end, you won't just know what to do, you'll have a system that you're already using, one that fits your brain and moves you forward. So there are 2 big reasons. Let me stop the screen share just for a second. There are 2 big reasons why I'm doing this as opposed to just my one-on-one coaching. So the first one is one-on-one coaching isn't financially feasible for everyone. Also, I'm just one person and I can only coach a certain number of people in a day. So this program allows me to offer an affordable solution to a larger audience, which is my dream. And you're not going to pay $2,000. You can join the 4-week ADHD Unblocked live cohort, this next one coming up, for $497 or 2 monthly payments of $275. Now, the 4-week live program is the core. That's where the breakthroughs happen, but I didn't want this to just be one of those things you sign up for, take notes, then fall off. I wanted to make sure that success was inevitable. That's why I built the 360-degree ADHD support. Bonus 1 is the co-working power hours. So real progress in real time, not someday. Live structured get it done sessions where you can actually finish tasks, external accountability when motivation tanks, and every session ends with something completing, which is important. Bonus 2 is the Unstuck community. So that's your 24/7 body double crew, instant access to people who actually get it, real-time encouragement and accountability, and a safe space to share wins, setbacks, and strategies without judgment. Bonus 3 is the ADHD-friendly no-note system. We will remember everything for you so you can stay present. Full session summaries and notes delivered to you. No more scrambling to write everything down, plus comprehensive, reusable action labs. Bonus number 4 is lifetime access with a no-guilt restart pass because you don't have to get it perfect the first time. You can rejoin future rounds free if life gets messy. You have lifetime access to all of the tools, templates, and trainings, and a built-in safety net that says it's okay to fall. Here's how you bounce back. Okay. Now, the only bad news is spots are limited. It's a live, high-touch program, so there's a lot of involvement. It's not a download and forget course. That's why when doors close, they close. So we start on October 9th, which also happens to be my birthday. Yeah. At 6 p.m. Pacific time, which is when I was born. I'm just kidding. 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. It's same time every week for 4 weeks. Okay, and that's the live coaching aspect of it. And then there's everything else that's baked into it that I just talked about. Okay. So here's the truth. The best way to get to the next level is to have someone who's already been there, reach back, grab your hand, and help pull you up. That's what this is. A chance to finally stop trying to figure it all out on your own. We've all been there. To get structure, guidance, and support that makes progress not just possible, but inevitable. If you've been sitting here thinking, this feels like exactly what I've been looking for, then this is your moment. Not a forever decision, not a promise to have it all figured out tonight, just a yes to giving yourself a real shot. The program, the coaching, the community, the bonuses, it all starts on October 9th, my birthday. Let's do this together. Okay, Ariana's gonna throw in a link in the chat, and that's where You can get more information on the program and sign up if you're interested in. Definitely check that out. Now, let's do a little bit of Q&A. Ariana's been diligently fielding questions in the chat over there.
One of a question that's come up a lot is the times for the seminar, the cohort.
So yeah, the live sessions are going to start at 6 p.m. So 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm not sure what time that is in Germany or Australia. But in the first cohort that we had last month, we had a fair amount of people who were international, and some of them were troopers and logged in at crazy times every week. But most of the international folks would watch the replays, which are available the following day, and then just be involved in the community.
Awesome. Not discuss here, but will this seminar ever repeat? Will we have access to this recording?
Yes, you will. You'll have access to this recording, and I've got a few more of these webinars. I'm doing the same thing, so for anyone who tuned in late, if you'd prefer to join live instead of just watching the recording, you can sign up for another one of these webinars, but you'll also have the recording. Yeah.
Can you explain shame residue again, please?
Shame residue, yeah. So shame residue is when you have a emotional response to an experience. Okay, so likely to do, or not likely, but often to do with having failed in that experience in the past in some capacity, which then creates a hurdle and makes it much more difficult to carry it out in the future. Right? You have a negative association, negative emotional association to this task.
Is this a one-time thing or will it happen again in the future?
Good question. So we're gonna do versions in the future, but the key thing here is like we had our first cohort a month ago, and that one was at a discounted rate because it was a early bird. This next one we have it locked in at this rate. Future ones, I don't know where we're going to set the rate. I say that because it's not just me; it's a team that I'm working with to host this and put this on. So to make it feasible, we might have to make adjustments. So while you could probably wait for another cohort in future, if this sounds interesting to you, like it's going to be helpful to you, then I would, I would jump on it.
What about dates after October?
Dates after October. So October 9th is when it starts, and then it's till
October 30th.
Yeah.
But another cohort.
So that I don't know. I don't know when the next one is going to be either. Approaching the holidays, I'm not sure if we're going to do. I mean, it would be cool if we tried to do one the following month, but I'm not sure yet. So.
Why is there a stick of butter on your YouTube play button?
Oh man! All right, inside scoop here. I get this. This is probably one of the top questions I get on my YouTube videos. It's just a little like squishy toy that I think Ariana got it for me, and it's a good conversation piece for sure. I got my stick of butter, my brain, my banana, my giant pill.
Your Paris Hilton album.
Yeah, my Paris Hilton reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I was honest to God," and she's like, "Hey, I wrote a song about ADHD. Can I send you my album?" And she sent me an album and a bunch of like beauty supplies, and a letter that is my induction into Bad Bitch University.
Do you think it's possible to get better at tasks without medication?
Yeah, oh, 100%. Yeah, medicate. I'm glad you said that too, because when I had the Venn diagram up here, I didn't want it to seem like everybody should be on medication. That's a totally personal choice. The efficacy of ADHD medication is very high, but there are lots of reasons as to why people don't, and in some cases can't take it. Totally okay. You don't need medication. The way I always describe medication for people who are just starting, like clients, or even if people are reaching out to me with questions The way I like to describe it is like ADHD medication isn't going to solve all your problems. It does put you in a slightly better position to address your problems, though, but it still requires doing the work. Most of that work, um, in my experience, is addressing the executive functions because at the end of the day, um, your executive functions are skills, so they're that's a variable that you can ultimately control. Medication makes it a little bit easier to control that variable, right? Again, I'm not saying everybody should be on meds. Doesn't it's not right for everybody.
There are a lot
Um,
of questions around like shame residue and stuff like that, but a lot of those questions you do go into depth um, in the live sessions.
Yeah. So yeah, and just on that note, I mean, this is a really abbreviated version of. I mean, the reality is like this stuff requires some drilling into. So I made this a version that I know that you guys can take and do something with. It still requires the carrying it on and like actually taking action on in the future, but it's enough. But stuff like this, like we go much deeper into it in the 4 week session. So it is challenging to kind of like give all of that information in a way that's not gonna just make things confusing right now. I just was scrolling up and someone said medication alternatives.
Yeah,
So
a lot of
why don't we just
medication questions. Yeah,
and you know what? Let me also again, like I said earlier, I'm not a doctor, right?
thank you.
So I'm going to give you an answer, not from a clinical perspective, but if you think back to that Venn diagram, the three circles, it's medication, it's therapy, and it's coaching. So the coaching and the therapy, and really, like you can think about therapy as like addressing the um, you can think of coaching really almost as like an extension of therapy in that it's more involved in like the day-to-day type work, like the on the ground type work that needs to happen. In therapy, it's very illuminating and you're going to learn a lot about yourself and you're going to develop strategies. Coaching kind of helps take those strategies into the future and make them happen. Um, those two things I think are super powerful when it comes to ADHD management. With medication out of the picture, I mean that the like not so interesting answer to that is like get good sleep. Um, have your diet be decent, get exercise, right? Those there's a lot of data that supports exercise being really good for ADHD. As far as like alternatives in the way of supplements, like I don't think there's anything that's really like comparable. Um, on a personal note, like there are a lot of brands that reach out to me, like supplement type brands that reach out to me that I will not work with because a lot of them advertise as being like an alternative to ADHD medication. It's such crap. Um, but like so personally, I take L-theanine with caffeine. Caffeine, a little bit of a stimulant, kind of helps me focus. L-theanine kind of like stables it out a little bit, makes me feel less jittery, kind of gives me like a calm focus. I take omega 3s, and that's yeah, like having a decent diet. For me, exercising is like crucial. If I'm not exercising, like all of my ADHD symptoms are much worse. And then sleeping, and I've been really good about getting to bed at a consistent time and waking up at a consistent time. Last thing I'm going to say, because I know I'm rambling a little bit, is sleep is super important. Sleep is also extremely like elusive to most ADHDers. And where it starts, if you want to like control your sleep a little bit more, it starts with the time that you wake up. So you cannot choose to go to bed earlier. I mean, you can lay down in bed, but your body won't shut down if it's not ready to shut down. What you can control is the time that you wake up. So if you consistently start waking up at like 5:30 a.m., for example, that's what I do, then it becomes a lot easier to get to bed at a consistent earlier time. And then when you can lock in, when you can start getting to bed and waking up around the same time, you start to feel much better. Your symptoms are gonna be definitely like noticeably alleviated if you're getting better sleep. Okay, I think that's probably a good place to stop. Thank you guys so much for hanging out for an extra 10 minutes and for this whole session. I like this is so I love talking to you guys, and I wish we had more time to do the Q&A type stuff. But again, thank you guys so much. That link, Ariana threw it in the chat. Also, we're gonna email you a thing that you can click on that link for. Oh, and there's some testimonials on there also from the first cohort. So if you're, don't just take my word for it. If you want to check that out, I think there's a couple videos on there of people talking and some written testimonials. So definitely check that out. And cool. I hope to see you guys there. If not, I'll see you elsewhere as well. But feel free if you want to hop into the next webinar, you can. Totally cool too. But we'll be covering the same stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Hope you have a great night. Oh man, and everyone who tuned in internationally, where it's like 2, 3 a.m. You guys are awesome. Special thanks to you guys for joining in.
We are
Hope this
doing
was worth it for
another
you.
one of these that is Europe friendly. So
Oh,
you don't have to get up
yes,
at
yeah,
2
yeah, yeah,
a.m.
yeah. Yeah, that's what we're gonna try to do, one that's at a different time, which is more.
We will do one that's at a different time.
We are, and sorry for everyone who tuned into this one at 3 a.m. But okay, all right. Thank you guys. Have a good night.